All right, last PowerPoint of the year. So this is one of my favorite PowerPoints, and it's all about animals that have a backbone, but they're also amniotes. So we're going to start out with amphibians, and then we'll move on to amniotes, and we'll talk about reptiles, birds, and mammals. So you don't have to write the warm-up down, but I think it's important to go back and think about 3 chordates that don't have a backbone. That's going to be the lancelet, the tunicate, and the hagfish. And if any of those terms seem fuzzy to you, then you should go back to the PowerPoint before this. So these are all vertebrates, and specifically we're talking about vertebrates that are also amniotes. So amphibians evolved from lobe-finned fish, and their lobe fins eventually gave rise to limbs and allowed them to live outside of the water. Amphibian means both ways of life, and it is referring to the aquatic tadpole that eventually metamorphosizes into a frog that has lungs. So one is specialized for living in the water and the other for living on land. It also includes salamanders, like I said, frogs. And this guy's a little bit hard to see. They're very strange organisms called caecilians. They kind of look like snakes, but they are actually amphibians. So a lot of them do have lungs, but they also breathe through their skin, and it has to remain moist. So they're restricted to damp habitats. They are ectothermic, which means they don't regulate their own body temperature. And here we have the circulatory system of a fish. It has 1 atria and 1 ventricle. And of course, blood is oxygenated in the gills. Here we have, this next one is the circulatory system of an amphibian. So they have a 3-chambered heart with 2 atria and 1 ventricle. And you can see here it says skin or lung, or I should say gills, but some of them have gills as well. They breathe through their skin, they can breathe through their lungs, or they can breathe through gills. Depends on the stage of the organism and which organism we're talking about. Most of them have external fertilization, so the female will lay eggs and then the male will come fertilize them, and they live or they survive in the water until they hatch. They don't really do a lot of parental care, but at this point you do see some complex mating behaviors. Okay, so now on to amniotes. All amniotes have an amniotic egg, and there's 4 membranes in each amniotic egg. There's the amnion, the chorion, the yolk sac, and allantois. So you've got the yolk sac, which is a stockpile of nutrients. We have the allantois for getting rid of waste. We have the amnion, which is filled with amniotic fluid and just sort of like a little cushion for the embryo. And then we have the chorion. It's this layer right here for gas exchange. And there's going to be a shell. It can be leathery or it can be hard, depending on the animal. And just a quick aside, reptiles and birds are going to have the amniotic egg. Mammals have the amniotic sac. So you can see the amnion here in blue is pretty small, but in mammals it's really big. And you still have a yolk sac, and you still have an allantois. Everything's sort of moved around a little bit for animals that keep a baby in the womb during gestation as opposed to laying eggs. So the point of the amniotic egg is to slow dehydration. So, or having an animal, that's in the womb for its embryonic development or gestation, it slows dehydration. So this allows amniotes, meaning reptiles, birds, and mammals, to live in areas that aren't damp. They can live in lots of different areas. They also have keratinized skin or feathers or hair or scales. Again, this is just helping them from drying out so they can live in a variety of habitats. And they have kidneys and large intestines that are specialized for retaining water. So again, it's just helping them not dry out. So reptiles. This includes tuataras. They live in the Galapagos. They're very primitive. It includes, of course, lizards, snakes, turtles and tortoises, and alligators and crocodiles. So they've got the keratinized scales. They have a 3-chambered heart, and they are ectothermic. So the 3-chambered heart and the ectothermic is similar to it is the same as amphibians. And this sort of, this part right here, so with the 2 atria, there's a mixing of blood that is low in oxygen, which is shown in blue, and blood that's rich in oxygen, shown in red. It's mixed, so it's not super efficient. You see it down here in the ventricle too. That along with the fact that they're ectothermic makes them have really low metabolic rates. So they really don't have to eat very much. They can survive on about 10% of what a mammal would eat. For most of them, fertilization is going to be internal and they'll lay eggs, but there are a couple that give live birth. On to birds. All birds have a really large pectoral muscle, and they have a large breastbone, and that's to give their wings the power of flight. Even if they've since evolved and don't fly anymore, if they're a flightless bird, they're still going to have those attributes. They have hollow or honeycomb type bones, so this makes them lighter, which is specialized for flight. They have a 4-chambered heart, and you can see there's a septum in the middle, so there's no more mixing of the low oxygen and high oxygen blood. And they're endothermic, so they regulate their own body temperature, and they have a much higher metabolic rate and require a lot more food than amphibians and reptiles. Fertilization's internal. They do have to keep the eggs warm, and many of them have elaborate courtship rituals. And this is showing you the blue-footed booby from the Galapagos, and we talked about that before, where the males show off their brightly colored feet, and whoever's the most brightly colored is supposedly the healthiest, and that's who the female chooses as her mate. Mammals. This includes mammals that we're familiar with, like, say, a dog or a cat. Oh, and by the way, this is a star-nosed mole, and they do live in the U.S. It also includes marsupials, so pouched mammals. They live in Australia, and there are a couple species in South America, and we have one species, Didelphis virginiana, which is the Virginia possum that lives in the U.S. It also includes monotremes, which are egg layers, which we'll talk about in a minute. So they're endothermic. They have a 4-chambered heart, very high metabolic rate, very active. So, and they're more active than birds. So the way that we supply our high metabolism with the nutrients and energy that it needs is with our specialized teeth. So mammals have specialized teeth to break up their food into smaller pieces, and each tooth is shaped specifically based on what they eat. So carnivores have conical or pointy teeth. Herbivores are going to have flat teeth with grooves in them. You get the idea. And with the food being cut up into smaller pieces, we can get more energy from it than birds. Fertilization is going to be internal. Most are going to have most of their gestation happen in the womb. Marsupials will give birth to underdeveloped young that will finish developing in the pouch. And then you have the monotremes, which we'll talk about in a minute, that lay eggs. All mammals have mammary glands. That's where their name comes from. And they have a high degree of parental care. So the monotremes, or egg layers, include the platypus, and there's 2 species of echidna, and they live in Australia and New Guinea, and they're really unique. They lay eggs. They don't actually have nipples. They have mammary glands on their ventral surface, which is, kind of their belly, and it's almost like the milk comes out as sweat, and the young just sort of lap it up off the skin surface. So scientists believe that our first mammals were probably egg layers, so that makes these 2 some of the most primitive mammals on Earth. So that's it for PowerPoints. We've gotten through all our content for the year. We've learned about, just recently we've done plants, we've done invertebrates, and now we've done vertebrates. So you've got a video review, which will count as a test grade, on animals. It includes invertebrates and vertebrates, and that will conclude your assignments for today.